Ladies and gentlemen, it's a big, weird, wild world out there, friends, and here we stand, al pie del cañón, ready for anything. I'm Rob, and you're listening to
The ProBoh Show!
Good morning, everyone. It is 8:30 a.m. Central European Time on this, the 10th of August. How are we doing? Of course, this is only the 10th of August if you're listening to us in the afternoon version of this show. Otherwise, you're listening to this on a Tuesday. But this is Monday morning. How are we doing out there, friends? The start of another interesting topic this week, as chosen by you, my friends. As you know, I've been posting options for you to vote on for our unpopular opinions this week about mental health. And you guys made some really good decisions, I think, some really fascinating stuff. Let's see what's on the board for today's show. In today's 100 Humans, we asked them to name a negative emotional state. Nombra un estado emocional negativo. A negative emotional state. Today's unpopular opinion is we are too quick to label normal emotions as mental illness. Nos apresuramos demasiado a etiquetar las emociones normales como enfermedades mentales. I think I did that okay. You can let me know. And I will either give myself a nivelazo or punish myself thoroughly. How are you doing anyway? Hopefully you had a nice weekend. I know I did. Very, very relaxing. And this week is the eclipse in 2 days. I believe it's Wednesday, right? The eclipse is happening Wednesday, the 12th of August. We've decided, me and my better half, to go to Guadalajara to see it. Apparently we'll see the full eclipse for around 53 seconds. But we do need special glasses. Don't do a Donald Trump, friends. You know, get your glasses. Be safe. Anyway, also you can join us live as well. Become a member of our audience. If you're as cool, as sexy, as charming, as interesting, as impactful, as influential as these guys, well, you should join us on twitch.tv/professional bohemian. That's twitch.tv/bohemia profesional, pero en inglés. And of course, you can interact with the show outside of our lifetimes. You do that on my Instagram, which is @professionalbohemian. But if you're extra specially cool, sexy, charming, handsome, of course, you can join me on my Patreon, where you get all the VODs and perhaps some other interesting stuff coming up soon. Another series based on your favorite part of this show. I don't want to give you too many spoilers, but that will be exclusive to Patreon. And then eventually we'll roll it out to the wider public. Anyway, let's see who's joining us right now, shall we? We have Vero. Good morning, beautiful bohemians around the universe and beyond. Good morning, Vero. I did manage to make the pre-stream music available for everybody to listen to today. She loves the cello music. We have the Bridge here. Good morning, my beautiful Bonnie Bouncy Bohemians. Good morning, Bridge. BB's here. Good morning. Great music. We don't hear you though. Sorry, it was too loud. And good morning, Bohemians. How was your weekend? Asks Mike. So yeah, it was nice. Very relaxing. We went to a lovely meal on Saturday, but we were subjected to some kind of weird opinions. It's true. Okay. Yeah, I don't want to get into the weeds with climate change deniers, those modern day flat earthers. But yeah, I heard a bunch of times from one particular corner of the table that 39 degrees is normal, climate change, blah. Just, I imagine I'm not the only person to encounter these kind of opinions being thrown around over the dinner table. I, of course, being a polite dinner guest, just kept my mouth shut. But it's worth bearing in mind, right? It's worth bearing in mind that April 2026 was the warmest April in Spain since records began in 1961, right? Sitting 3.2 degrees centigrade above 1991 to 2020 average. May and June were both classified as extremely warm, with late June bringing unprecedented heat waves that smashed mid-century records. June and July recorded an average temperature of 24.5 degrees, beating previous records. I mean, it is not typical weather we're experiencing. But if you're anything like me and you're invited to some lunch, you just keep your mouth closed, don't you? And you just enjoy it. Let's see what people are saying. It's my brother's birthday on the 12th. Oh, nice. During the eclipse. That's from the bridge. Mike says, Guadalajara sounds great, but I'm too lazy to travel just for an evening. Yeah, I have no choice. I've got no one to babysit the dogs, so we have to kind of get away when and where we can. All right, should we get into some news? Of course, you can join us live in the show if you're too lazy to wait for the afternoon repeat. Ask yourself this: what's the worst that can happen?
Nothing bad can happen. It can only good happen.
It can only good happen. All right, let's get into some news, shall we? Well, it's not really news, but an interesting question posed by, who was it? Business Insider today. Why billion-dollar robotics startups are obsessed with folding laundry. ¿Por qué las startups de robótica valoradas en miles de millones están obsesionadas con doblar la ropa? I think it's a valid question, but quite an obvious one, I think, right? Because when we're talking about domestic robots, I think folding the laundry requires a dexterity that is right now unique to we humans. So let's dig in, shall we? Silicon Valley's latest robotics obsession is laundry folding, and for good reason. It's one of the best early tests of whether a home robot can really do useful work. Startups like Figure AI, Sunday Robotics, and Weave Robotics are showing off machines that can fold clothes on their own, using the task as a way to prove dexterity, intelligence, and control in a setting that is difficult but relatively safe. Unlike a more dangerous tasks, dropping a shirt does not cause much harm, but folding clothes still requires robots to handle soft, unpredictable objects with real precision. The bigger question, and well, actually, let me ask you a question. Would you have a home domestic robot? Would you have a domestic robot? I believe I asked my better half this question, and she was firmly a no, I think. Whereas I'm 100% yes, absolutely. I mean, I don't fold my clothes as it is, but if I can get a machine that will wash and dry the dishes, put my laundry in the laundry basket, basically do all the things I don't like doing, make the bed, for example, dude, sign me up, man. But then, having said that, I don't trust a Google Dot or an Amazon Echo or whatever the hell they call it, the domestic devices that spy on you. Would I really trust a domestic robot not to be spying for billionaire tech overlords? But would you have one? Tell me in the chat. The bigger question is whether laundry is just a demo or the first step towards genuinely helpful home robots. These machines are still expensive. Reliability in real homes is unproven, and past laundry robots failed because they were too costly and unreliable. But today's companies are better AI, cheaper hardware, and real-world training data could change that. For now, laundry is the gateway, but the long-term goal is a robot that can do many household chores, adapt to messy environments, and eventually become general-purpose home assistant Silicon Valley has promised for years. Let's see. Nobody likes folding clothes. It has to be done, says Vero. Yeah. I mean, does it though? I have not worn an unwrinkled shirt since, I don't know, my last job interview. Just buy a jacket, man. Mike says, AI can write a PhD essay on metaphysics, yet struggles to fold a shirt. Let's be honest, a lot of things that I'm pretty good at, but folding a shirt is not one of them. But yeah, interesting, right? Is that a household task of sufficient value for you to spend like 10,000 euros on a home help robot? You know, perhaps not, right? But it does demonstrate quite a bit of intelligence and dexterity, so hey, let's give them a chance. Look, if you've ever had or been tempted to have a Roomba, this is just the basic evolution of a Roomba, right? The domestic robots that vacuum your home. So if you've ever been tempted to get one, perhaps this is the next logical evolution of that robot. Anyway, friends, on that note, let's go to today's unpopular opinion.
Unpopular opinion.
Okay, this was, as of this morning, at least the highest voted topic on the subject of mental health. Voted, of course, by you guys on my Patreon. That's patreon.com/professional bohemian. And here it is. We are too quick to label normal emotions as mental illnesses. Etiquetar las emociones normales como enfermedades mentales. Are we too quick to do that? Nos apresuramos demasiado a etiquetar las emociones normales como enfermedades mentales. True or false? What do you think? I'll tell you what, I can tell you what Instagram thought. Again, a very heavily biased one today. 89% of people said true. But what do you think? What do you think? It's an interesting one today because I don't think this argument is as cut and dry as the heavily weighed answer on Instagram might suggest. I mean, the debate may really be about where we draw the boundary between suffering that belongs in life and suffering that belongs to medicine. Where do we draw that line? Where do we draw that line? It seems to me that older generations draw that line. Well, they probably don't even draw that line. I mean, not every painful emotion is an illness, but not every normal emotion remains healthy at every intensity level. So it's an interesting one. Let's dig in, shall we? Again, write your comments in the chat and we will get to them in the second part of the show. But let's dig into the pro column, agreeing that we are too quick to label normal emotions as mental illnesses. Distress is not automatically disorder. Grief after a death, anxiety before an important event, sadness after rejection, and exhaustion during difficult period can all be painful without being pathological. Human beings are supposed to react emotionally to difficult circumstances. Treating every intense feeling as evidence that something is wrong can turn ordinary suffering into a medical problem. I mean, it seems to me it's true that we use more mental health vocabulary in everyday life, but I'm not sure that really translates into the fact that we may treat every negative emotion as a mental health issue. And of course, there's a difficulty in knowing when an ordinary distress has crossed the line into something more serious. And I think the danger is dismissing symptoms as normal can leave people struggling unnecessarily when effective support is available. I mean, I have some experience in this, as you've heard me talk on previous episodes of the show. When my best friends passed away, within a month of each other, some 10 years ago now, like 10 years and 2 months ago, I should have really gone to therapy, and it was a certain, I don't know, a stigma perhaps attached to therapy, or over-inflated sense of my own ability to cope, which led me to reject a doctor's offer of therapy from the public health system. A decision I went on to regret for years after. Because it's not just the consequences of, in my case, grief, right? It wasn't just the consequences of the grief. It was how I normalized certain behaviors for years after, until I eventually went into therapy for a different reason and started talking about those consequences, where it eventually cleared up. So I think there is a bit of a danger there. Dismissing, like, oh, it's normal that you're grieving, it's normal, this is normal, when it can leave people just suffering unnecessarily, right? Or wrong. Diagnostic language has entered everyday conversation. People increasingly describe themselves as depressed when they're sad, OCD when they're particular, traumatized after an unpleasant experience, or anxious whenever they feel nervous. Clinical vocabulary can give ordinary emotions an authority permanence they may not deserve. But again, I'm going to repeat what I said in the first one. I think everyday use of clinical language can also increase awareness, right? It can give people words and experiences they previously couldn't describe. I mean, sad doesn't quite describe depression, does it? A pathological kind of, a pathological extent of sadness that goes beyond just being blue, right? I mean, informal language doesn't necessarily mean that people are genuinely diagnosing themselves. It just gives them, or it gives us, it gives society in general an increased awareness, which I think can be a healthy thing, can't it? Medicalising emotions can reduce resilience. If every period of discomfort is interpreted as a symptom requiring treatment, people may become less confident in their ability to endure unpleasant emotions. Sadness, uncertainty, embarrassment, loneliness, and fear are experiences people can sometimes move through rather than conditions they need to eliminate. Yeah. If I'm honest with you today, I'm somewhat in the middle, perhaps leaning towards a false, but there is, and I've heard language like this come out of my own mouth. If we coddle people, that emotional immune system isn't going to develop. The immune system we build through rough experiences isn't going to develop properly. But building resilience, I think, can easily become a respectable way of telling people to suffer in silence, can't it? Oh, shush, you'll be okay. Seeking help doesn't necessarily weaken a person's ability to cope. I mean, it actually can strengthen it. That's what I found after my experience in therapy. Let's do one more in the pro column again, where 89% of the vote is still going live, so it's hard to tell. Yeah, it's still 89% in the pro column. I'll do one more. Context can disappear once a label appears. Someone who feels miserable in an abusive relationship, unbearable job, or socially isolated life may be responding understandably to their circumstances. Focusing immediately on what is wrong inside the person can distract attention from what is wrong around them. So perhaps, you're entering a period of depression. Perhaps your job isn't fulfilling, your relationship isn't rewarding. But surely what we should be focusing on is maybe finding a better job or getting out of an abusive relationship rather than trying to fix yourself, helping yourself cope more with things around you that could be destructive, I think is the argument they're making here. But external causes and mental illnesses are not mutually exclusive, are they? A difficult environment can trigger genuine psychological disorders, right? And treating symptoms can help someone become capable of changing their circumstances. Like once you're out of that depressive or anxious frame of mind, you can look at things more clearly with more perspective. Okay, these are the things, concrete things I need to change, which was the case with me. And I don't consider myself a weak person. Tell you what, let's do one more because I'm enjoying offering rebuttals to these pro arguments. Labels can become identities. A diagnosis can provide relief and understanding, but it can also become part of how someone explains every emotion or limitation. Temporary difficulties may begin to feel like fixed features of the self once they acquire a clinical name. Is that true? Once we label something, does it become a part of our identity? I think for many people, a diagnosis has exact opposite effect. It separates a condition from their character, right? It replaces years of shame or confusion with an understandable explanation. If you're suffering from depression and you just operate in everyday life without properly being diagnosed, I think then you start to apply that as a condition, as an unchanging condition until you're diagnosed with depression and you can think, okay, well, look, this is the illness and this is me. They are two separate conditions. They're two separate things. I think maybe the opposite is true there. But hell, again, we don't care what I think. Let's get into the con column where only 11% of people voted today that we are not too quick to label normal emotions as mental illnesses. The con column, the false, all those people who voted false, not many of you today. Recognition corrected decades of neglect. For generations, people experiencing serious depression, anxiety, trauma, or other conditions were often told to toughen up or get over it. Greater willingness to recognize mental illness may look excessive, partly because society previously went too far in the opposite direction. Yeah, is this the case, do you think? Do you think, look, I think there's a big difference. We always say, or we hear quite often, right, that why does everyone have some kind of psychological disorder? I mean, perhaps everybody does have some kind of bent towards a certain particular psychological quirk, and perhaps it just went untreated before. I mean, I think about classrooms and the kids that I went to school with, and now I know the symptoms of autism and learning disabilities. What were the kids that were labeled dumb? Weren't dumb at all, were they? Perhaps they were autistic, perhaps dyslexic. I mean, I was labeled a dumb kid, and it wasn't until I got out of a system so quick to label people with certain kind of labeling what could be a disorder as a personality trait. Until I got out of that, I was kind of stuck in a rut. Mental illness often begins with ordinary emotions. Depression involves sadness, anxiety involves fear, and many disorders exaggerate experiences everybody has. The fact that an emotion is normal in moderation does not tell us whether its intensity, duration, or impact has become pathological. Yeah, I think this is where we talk about, or where I mentioned at the beginning, at the top of the show, about that line, right? Because we're not psychiatrists, we're not therapists. We are not the ones to be able to judge whether sadness has evolved into a depression, whether fear has evolved into anxiety. You know, when those normal emotions have evolved past their normal state into pathological states, right? Who are we to say? You know, I think a small spoonful of understanding will go a long way in this one. Labels can unlock useful support. Naming a condition can help people understand patterns that otherwise seem like personal weaknesses or failure. It can provide access to treatment, accommodations, communities, and strategies that will dramatically improve functioning. Yeah, I mean, if you are alone, just constantly befuddled and frustrated with your own state of mind, decisions you make that on further analysis just seem incoherent or go against perhaps your moral fiber, and you experience that frustration with yourself, you feel alone until you find other communities or, you know, someone, an understanding ear that can perhaps offer you some kind of sense of normality, a feeling that you're not isolated. Labels can sometimes unlock support. People often hide suffering rather than exaggerating. People can appear functional while spending enormous effort managing symptoms privately. Assuming that their distress is merely a normal part of life because they continue working or socializing can seriously underestimate what they are experiencing. Again, I think we tend to look at everything through our own lens, don't we? You know, our own pain threshold or emotional pain threshold. Like, if that were me, that would be that would be nothing. Why is it being such a problem? Why is it being so problematic for this person? Again, we kind of judge everything through our own lenses. But the truth of the matter is, what could be something and nothing to you is climactic, right? It's massive for the other person. I mean, think of kids, right? They get home from school and, oh my God, they're just in pieces, aren't they? Because they've heard some mean words from their peers at school, and to you, that's like, come on. But to them, it's something that will perhaps even shape the rest of their lives. Anyway, should we do one more? Yeah, let's do one more. Emotional suffering deserves attention even without catastrophe. Requiring someone to become completely dysfunctional before their difficulties count as legitimate creates an unnecessary high threshold for help. Early support may prevent a manageable problem from developing into something much worse. Yeah, and it seems to be mental health is almost unique in this aspect, right? Oh, it's not a problem. Don't worry about it. Oh my God, forget about it. Look, if you had a gunshot, if you had a gunshot in your leg, you wouldn't wait until you were almost bleeding out to go and get it treated. If you had just a little spot of gangrene, wait until your whole leg's fallen off. It seems to be we treat mental health in a very different way than we treat physical health, and perhaps we need to redress that balance. That's why I'm asking you, my friends. Oh my God. So I'm asking you. Today's unpopular opinion is we are too quick to label normal emotions as mental illnesses. Nos apresuramos, it's a tough word, nos apresuramos demasiados a etiquetar las emociones normales como enfermedades mentales. True or false? So I will post a poll in the chat and you guys will tell me. I'm going to take a very quick 4-minute break while you vote and express your opinions, guys. I will see you in just a few minutes. Hey guys, if you'd like to support the show, you can do so on Patreon. That's patreon.com/professional bohemian. There you'll find VODs of the episodes as they are recorded live, blogs, vlogs, and behind the scenes content. If you'd like to watch the show live, you can do so on twitch.tv/professional bohemian, and you can participate in the polls we use in the show on Instagram @professional bohemian or Twitter @ProBoh, ProBoh. Okay, on with the show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. You're joining us live at 9 a.m. Central European Time, and I'm Rob, and this is the ProBoh Show. Welcome, welcome. You still have time to vote. Let me just check out how much time you have. You've got another 4 minutes to express your opinion on today's unpopular opinion. Before we get back to that, what did you miss if you just tuned in? We spoke about, why the robotics industry seems obsessed with folding laundry. And the obvious answer there is that, it's just very dexterous work that requires quite a lot of physical intelligence, doesn't it? I mean, it's an unreliable material, is clothing. And I think the theory is that once a robot has mastered the complexity of manipulating material and folding it in a way that's visually appealing, then perhaps other tasks will be easier. But the billion-dollar startups like Figure AI, Sunday Robotics, Weave Robotics, they're all right now showing off machines that can fold clothes. My question to you was, would you have a domestic robot in your home? I mean, I think, if I'm honest with you, I think I would.
Nothing bad can happen. It can only good happen.
Until they eventually overthrow us and and the robots take over. But until then, I'll have perfectly folded laundry. And who doesn't want that in their life? Come on, let's be honest. All right. And then we moved into today's unpopular opinion as voted for by you, my friends. It was, we are too quick to label normal emotions as mental illness. Nos apresuramos demasiado a etiquetar las emociones normales como enfermedades mentales. A tough one today. You still got 2 minutes left to vote. I know there's a few of you watching that haven't voted yet, at least 1 or 2 of you at least. I would love you to do that before we get into the pros and cons. Or before we move beyond the pros and cons, rather. I mean, it's a tough debate. Is it really about where we draw the boundary, I think, between suffering that belongs to life, right, and suffering that belongs to medicine, whether it turned pathological or not, I think, for the want of a better word. There's no blood test separating ordinary sadness from pathological depression is the problem, or everyday anxiety from an anxiety disorder. The distinction often depends on duration, intensity, impairment, context, and professional judgment, right? And that, friends, is where a therapist would step in, right? That makes the boundary necessarily fuzzy, and fuzzy boundaries are going to invite disagreement, aren't they? There's also a philosophical question here about what emotional health actually means. I mean, if health means feeling good, then painful emotions naturally start to look like failures that require correction. But if health includes the ability to experience like grief, fear, disappointment, anger, uncertainty appropriately, then psychological discomfort can sometimes be evidence that a person is responding normally to an imperfect world. Or for the want of a better word, the ability to experience those negative emotions without them becoming a pathological problem is required to be healthy mentally, right? So it depends philosophically where you stand on that boundary. I mean, there is an opposing danger, though, that we tend to, in media at least, romanticize a certain amount of suffering, don't we? Telling someone their depression or their distress is just a part of life can sound wise while leaving a treatable condition untreated. The language of resilience can liberate people from unnecessary labels, but it can also become an excuse for neglect, and quite often self-neglect. Grief is particularly pernicious in this aspect. I mean, when I analyze my own grief that I experienced over years and years, I mean, it's almost like I linked my friendship to the grief, and if I let go of that grief, then I would be letting go of the friend. Sounds somewhat stupid now, but back then it just felt normal. Perhaps the most useful distinction isn't between normal and abnormal emotions, right? Because almost every emotion is normal somewhere, it fits. The better question is the reaction proportionate to what is happening? Is it changing over time? Is the person still able to live the life they want to live, dealing with that discomfort? I mean, you may be dealing with some heavy emotions. What do you prioritize in your life? Is it productivity? Is it happiness? Is it love? What is it? I mean, these are all personal questions. And again, questions that a therapist helps you answer, I think. Anyway, let's get into some amazing comments that you guys wrote. Gigi is here. She says, morning, true. I agree. I think today people love giving labels to everything. If you say, I need a minute, people think you're having a big mental crisis. It feels like there are only two options now. You are totally fine or you need to see a doctor immediately. There is no middle ground anywhere. We forget that it's normal just to have a bad day. Yeah, which is true, but I mean, we're talking about, I don't know if that's is that a normal reaction to just having a bad day? Wow, you need therapy. I mean, quite often this is where community steps in, right? Your friends, look, dude, this is gone on long enough. Maybe you need to see someone. And and I think we treat therapy quite often like the worst case scenario, and that's not what it is. Like if a bad day turns into a bad week or a bad month, I would be saying, look, maybe a couple of sessions with someone to help clear up this emotion. Would that make me a bad person? Expressing that kind of, I think we see or we hear, why not try therapy, and we see it as some kind of a moral or emotional failing, don't we? And I don't think that's what it is. Everyone needs help. Shouldn't we be normalizing the idea that seeking help is okay? I don't know. Veros says, true. In some cases, people tend to label emotions as mental illness. A specialist should be the one to determine who has a mental illness and who does not. Yeah, bringing it right back to the unpopular opinion, we are too quick to label emotions as mental illness. Perhaps that's true. Yeah, when we look at it very pragmatically, I mean, really, it's a therapist who should be saying, look, that is actually a mental illness. I don't know, but I do think there's value in community opinion, right? I mean, it depends on your community, of course, like whose opinion you value. I mean, I guess for most of us, that would be family, right? Or close friends. I mean, if it's your work colleague, like, oh my God, look at you, anxious. Oh, perhaps you wouldn't take it that seriously, right? It's a tough one today. Bridge says the problem is when a symptom carries on in time, like stress is a good and necessary, but only momentarily. If it's ongoing, it ceases to be healthy. Yeah. I think the biggest problem with most psychological problems, or most emotions when they turn pathological, right? Let's phrase it in that way. I think it's more helpful. Is that the emotional, the negative emotional state, the psychological problem has a pretty strong immune system, right? And we humans are very, very good at rationalizing the way we feel. I'm supposed to. This is normal. You know, we're very good at rationalizing our emotional state to ourselves, I think. Which is why therapy is different from just having a close friend, right? Because a close friend is going to support you and they're on your side 100% of the time, but a therapist is not. That's not part of their remit. They're quite often to challenge you, make you think beyond what may be 100% comfortable. Thank you, Bridge. That was a good one. Vero says, when you have a disability, and I talk from experience, people tend to tag you as a needy person. However, not all of us need help 100% of the time, just for you to know. Yeah, I can imagine that's true. But I think there's a difference between a physical disability and a mental illness. And I think the most important difference is usually a physical disability is very noticeable from the outside. Or maybe not very noticeable, but you can tell when someone has a physical disability. Quite often, psychological illnesses or pathological psychological states or emotional states, they fly under the radar because that person is going for a beer, you know, on the weekend, or, you know, operating productively at work. They tends not to be taken all that seriously. I mean, I used to, I kind of rationalized my grief. Now, how long was it a problem for me? I would say almost 9 years I went without dealing with it. Why? Because I could go out for a beer and function, properly. I could function properly at work. I could still be funny. I could still be productive. But at the end of the day, I wasn't making the most out of my life. And my relationships suffered, and quite often I chose relationships that were not good for me. Yeah. It's a tough one today. It's a tough one. BB says, false. Mental health debate, false. In the past, people suffered in silence because mental health was a taboo topic. Now we just have better vocabulary to talk about our feelings. Giving a label to how you feel isn't a bad thing. It helps people understand their problems and ask for support early before things get worse. Yeah. That's kind of where I'm leaning, and for me too, BB. I think it's actually the part of the debate that I find most compelling. I mean, if it was a physical illness, you wouldn't wait until it was chronic before you went to get it seen to. You would go and see to it immediately. If you were slowly going blind, you wouldn't wait until you were blind to go to the doctors, would you? So why do we allow our emotional state to get to those levels? Because I still think, even though, we've moved on quite a lot with regards to mental health, I still think there's quite a lot of stigma attached to it. I was actually thrown out by the therapist. She said she wished she were as depressed as I was, says the Bridge. Yeah, if you've got a good therapist, therapy ends. My therapist eventually said to me, look, there's nothing more I can do for you. If you have a problem in the future, come back. And that is a great liberating feeling. Anyway, let's get to some comments I received on Instagram. Sander says, I think we started treating every uncomfortable emotion as something that needs fixing. Sometimes being sad, anxious, or angry is a completely normal response to life. Yeah, it is. It is. and I may be in that philosophical debate. I think an ability to treat negative emotions healthily, overcome them is a part of good, strong mental health. But that doesn't mean that not recognizing your emotional state, recognizing how it may be affecting your life and how some things maybe have turned chronic. I think that's probably the healthiest view, right? Or the healthiest way to react or understand your own mental health issues, whether you have them or not. Megan says, maybe, but greater awareness also means people finally recognize genuine problems that previous generations just ignored. Yeah. Raphael says, there's a difference between feeling anxious and having anxiety disorder. We blur that distinction way too often. Why? Because we use the word anxious. I'm feeling anxious. Now, if you had a friend that persistently used that word, if I had a friend that persistently said, I'm feeling anxious, today I'm anxious, oh my God, I'm anxious today, and that went on for a couple of weeks, months, year, me as a friend would say, have you thought about going to therapy? Perhaps this persistent anxiety is actually an anxiety disorder. Doesn't the label help, Rafa? And Solene, finally, we'll leave off with this one, says, normalizing mental illness was important. Normalizing ordinary emotional discomfort might be just as important. Wow, there's a good one. You know what you're going to get.
ProBoh approved.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the results of the poll, shall we? Give me a second to pull up those results. Oh, here it is. Here it is. All right, friends. So I made the statement that we are too quick to label normal emotions as mental illnesses, and you guys said today was a 50-50. 50-50. I'm happy with that. It's certainly less kind of bias in favor of the true, because there is a little element, a little nugget of truth to it, I think. Not every painful emotion is an illness. Not every normal emotion remains healthy at every intensity, right? I think the danger lies at both extremes. Medicalizing the unavoidable pain of being human and romanticizing suffering that genuinely needs help. A psychologically healthy society should be able to say both, that this hurts because life sometimes hurts, and this has become something more that I need help with. I think that is the healthiest thing. But you know what Grandpa Bo would say, right? He'd say, Rob, that's just an opinion, and opinions, they're like buttholes. Everyone has one. They all stink, including mine. Let's move on to today's 100 Humans. Oh my God. It was a long walk to work today across snow-capped mountains and through river valleys, and on that walk I encountered 100 humans and I asked them all a question. Today's question was, name a negative emotional state. Nombra un estado emocional negativo. I asked them that question, they gave me their answers. I'm in possession of the top 7 answers. Your job in the audience is to identify those top 7 answers. Big thank you to Fenokiti, Ivan GP, Emily, Africa, Juan Arreo, Ivan Samro, Fana Kasan, Pilar, Pedro, bueno, a lot of you. So thank you for interacting on Instagram. Again, @professionalbohemian. Okay. Vero says fear. Fear, miedo, fear. Is fear there? Yes, it is. Well done. Fear is there. It's the 4th most popular answer, with 11 of 100 humans saying fear. Name a negative emotional state. Fear. Gigi says jealousy. Jealousy. Thelos. Is jealousy there? Well done. Gigi on fire, just like Vero. Jealousy is there. Thelos. 10 of 100 humans said jealousy. It's the 5th most popular answer. Sadness, says Vero. Sadness. Tristeza. Sadness. Is sadness there? Yes. Oh boy. And sadness with 27 of 100 humans is the number 1 answer. Oh. Look at you. You guys on fire. Let's see. Sadness. Jealousy. Okay. Gigi says envy. Envy. Is envy there? No, it's not. Oh, but good answer. Good answer, though. All right, people often confuse the difference between jealousy and envy. Sasha's with us. Hello, friends. I'm lurking while I cook. I hope you're all doing well. Hey, you doing, Sasha? G'day, mate. Joining us all the way from Australia. Welcome, welcome. All right. Vero says anger. Anger. Ira. Anger. Is anger there? Yes, it is. My God. Jeezy Louise, you guys are on fire today. All right, let's very quickly go through some answers that I got on Instagram. Great answer from Pedro. He says melancholy. Melancholy. Which is, you know, a little bit of sadness, I guess. Melancholy is a good one. Rage, says Pilar, which is ira, isn't it? Rage. Annika San says, I guess envy other people, envying other people is a negative emotional state. Ivan Samarov says fear, sadness, and frustration. Good answers. Depression, says Juan Arreo. Anger, says Africa and Juan Arreo as well. Sadness. Ivan GP just, completely ripped the band-aid off and said bipolar disorder. I don't know if that's an emotional state as much as it is a mental illness, though. Anger and envy from Fenokitty. Let's see in the chat. Depression, says Mike. Depression is obviously an extreme pathological state of sadness. We had sadness, though. Frustration, says Vero. Good answer. Okay, how about... okay, when we're fearful to a pathological degree, we call it this disorder. Oof, it's tough to give you a clue. And there is and the final one. You have two left to identify. We often talk how society, particularly young men, there is an epidemic of this. Jeez, Louise, you're on fire today, guys. What do you think? There is a kind of an epidemic of this, perhaps leading to, in some senses, perhaps the demographic crisis we are. People tend to isolate themselves quite often nowadays. Oh my God, am I giving you too many clues? Am I giving you guys too many clues? Am I making this too easy? Mia actually has one of these answers on Instagram. Shall I rip off the band-aid? A pathological prolonged state of mild fear is called... Oh, actually, it's there. Oh my God, guys, you're on fire. Sorry, I needed to scroll a little bit more. Vero said blame, which is great. Culpabilidad, right? Or culpa. Blame, great answer. Not there, though. Mike says resentment. Resentment. Is resentment there? It's a good answer, but no, it's not. Okay. Oh, here we go. Mike says anxiety. Ansiedad. Anxiety. Is anxiety there? I know there are different components to the feeling of anxiety, listlessness. I think it's born of a prolonged mild fear, isn't it? Is anxiety there? Ansiedad. Yes, it is. Well done. Look at you guys. So good. All right, anxiety is there. With 15 of 100 humans, it's the third most popular answer. Just one more left to get. Gigi says shame. Shame, which is a great answer, isn't it? Shame. Is shame there? No, it's not. But she also says, and the bridge echoes it just further down, loneliness. Soledad. Is loneliness there? Yes, it is. Well done. Oh my God, guys. On fire. And for the first time, first show this week, you guys have completed today's 100 humans. Well done. Good one. All right. Should we go through the list? I think we probably should. Okay, so I asked 100 humans to name a negative emotional state. Nombra un estado emocional negativo. I asked them that question, and here are the answers. In position number 7. With 5 of 100 humans, we had guilt. Guilt. Culpa. Guilt. In position number 6. With 6 of 100 humans, we had loneliness. Soledad. Loneliness. In position number 5. With 10 of 100 humans, we had jealousy. Celos. Jealousy. 10 people said that. In position number 4, we had fear. Fear. Miedo. Fear. 11 of 100 humans said fear. In position number 3, anxiety. Ansiedad. Anxiety was our third most popular answer, with 15 of 100 humans saying that. In position number 2, we had anger. Ira. Anger. 22 of 100 humans said anger. And finally, in position number 1, with 27 of 100 humans, we had sadness. Well done, my friends. You are killing it today. I think last week we almost finished 100% of the 100 humans. Or did we finish 100% of the 100 humans? Look at you. Okay, do stay tuned for the rest of the week. Well, coming up after this show, depending what time you're listening on the radio, you'll hear Fitz with No Excuses. I'll be back again tomorrow morning. Do come and join us live, twitch.tv/professional bohemian. www.twitch.tv/bohemia profesional, professional bohemian, but in English. Come and join us.
Nothing bad can happen. It can only good happen.
It can only good happen. Become a member of our Bohemian community. All right, friends, that's all from me for today. You have probably another 4 or 5 hours to be able to vote on the rest of the unpopular opinions this week, all in regards to mental health. The ones you currently picked are great. I'd be happy if they stayed like this, but perhaps you have other ideas, other things you want to talk about. Guys, I'll be back again tomorrow, same time, same place. Thank you so much for tuning in. So many things you could have been doing today, but instead of doing those things, you special people, took the time to spend some time with me, and it means the absolute world. See you tomorrow.